Welcome back to Side Hustle Saturday, the show where we unpack the real stories, strategies, and systems behind building a business that actually works. Today, my guest is Alicia Gulati. She's a podcast strategist. She's a founder of Gulati Media and the woman behind more than 50 podcast launches for brands, founders, and organizations looking to turn their voice into real business growth. Alicia, welcome to Side Hustle Saturday.
Hey Lisa, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad that you're here because I've had Side Hustle Saturday since COVID. And I didn't know nothing about the podcast space. I just got my webcam, got on, and just started talking. I didn't know anything about it being a business. Lord knows I didn't know anything about monetization. I just did it because I enjoyed it. But now it is a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And so when I saw you on Podmatch, because that's how we matched up, I was like, I want to really talk to her because podcast is a business. It's
hmm
a business not only to help you grow your ecosystem, y'all know I'm on that, but it's also a thing. It's not just turning like I just said, buying some expensive equipment, a mic, a camera, and you get a guest on and you act cute and ask questions. It is a whole thing. And Alicia is a subject matter expert around that. But I that's why I wanted you to have you on the show because I wanted you to give some insight to people that are wanting to either have a podcast as a business or to take another step into their business and add a podcast as a layer to their ecosystem. I had to have you on the show. So, welcome. But I want you to tell us about how you got started because you didn't start out in podcasting. How'd you get started?
Yeah, so my beginning in corporate, I guess, which I wouldn't even call it corporate because I worked in a manufacturing plant with specialty gases. So you're thinking like medical gases or gases used in electronics and like creating like lasers and that kind of stuff. And had no problem working in that career. Absolutely loved it. I was one of maybe five women to 150 guys, right?
Mhm.
Like really had to set myself apart from the group in a way and like showcase that, hey, I could do hard things. Let's go.
Mhm.
And it was maybe 2015. My kiddo was about one. My first kiddo was about one, and I started driving him to the a babysitter that was maybe 20 minutes away. So my commute, which was 10 minutes from work, now became 30 minutes because then I had to drive roundabout to get him dropped off and then get back to work.
Mhm.
And I was like, I keep hearing the same five songs on the radio. This is so incredibly boring. What is happening here? And at the time, Google Play, which then turned into Google Play Music, which now I don't even think they have like a music streaming, or maybe it's just something else. I don't know. I don't use it. At the time had podcasts, and I was like, what is this podcast thing? Started listening to podcasts. And the first one I listened to was called Stuff You Should Know. And I was like, I'm a lifelong learner. I was also going to college at the time while being also working full time and being a parent. I was like, this is so incredibly interesting. And then discovered the online business space via a podcast. And the podcast was Raise Your Hand and Say Yes with Tiffany Han. And this was an Asian woman who was talking about building a business, talking about being a mother, talking about being like a primary breadwinner for her family and being able to get this done. And I was like, mind blown. Like,
The space
what do
where you
you
were
mean?
at, you were there already.
Right. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I can have a side hustle. I can make money on the side. I don't have to be limited to just my career. I can be, dabbling in a bunch of different stuff. Launched an Etsy store. My goodness, I totally forgot that I had done that when I was making jewelry for my bridesmaids. I ended up launching an Etsy store. I ended up doing, because my degree is in management and marketing. So I was doing some blogging, I was doing some discussions around postpartum depression and marketing, like being a new mom and the struggle with all of that. And just got into community with other people. Still had my full-time job, still was going to school, doing all this stuff, and then decided in, I want to say it was 28, no, 2017, I started guesting on other podcasts. 2018, I launched my first podcast, which was too closely related to what I did for work, like inventory analysis and supply chain and all of that stuff. And I quit very quickly because I was like, this is so incredibly boring. I do
You quit the
not want to be.
podcast? So you quit the podcast or you quit your
I
job?
quit the podcast because I was like, I
Okay.
cannot keep doing this. This is so boring. And then started a podcast with my sister in 2019 all about cults. And this is where podcasting kind of blew up for me because we were talking about cults from the perspective of being cult survivors. So I grew up in a cult, and most of the podcasts during that time were like talking about cults either from a comedy perspective or a true crime perspective. There
Mm,
wasn't anyone that talked about it like it was a lived experience and then analyzing these cults from that perspective. And the number of people that sent us DMs and said, "Oh my goodness, me too. Oh my goodness, I grew up in a cult." Like there's so many micro cults, and so many micro communities that are very cult adjacent. And it was just like, oh, there's something here. Podcasting can do, like, yeah, I'd been guesting and I had a like I'd done all the things, but this is where I was like, oh no, this is something deeper where we can connect with our audience on such a deeper level to positively impact their life. Okay, I see what's happening here. So I had amassed this from 2015 to then now it's 2020. So 5 years of guesting on podcasts, being in community with other quote unquote boss moms, being in these groups, doing marketing, launching podcasts, got let go in 2020
oh,
from my corporate job.
mhm.
And my husband was a stay-at-home parent during the time. Like he literally just went back to work after being a stay-at-home parent for the last like 7, 8 years. And so I'm the primary breadwinner. I don't have a choice except to figure it out, right? Like we got to figure something out, and it's got to happen because I'm not staying home with them kids, okay? Because like we homeschool him too. You can keep doing that. I never want to do that. Like that is not on the things like the list of things that I want to do as a parent is homeschool my kids, and then of course now I do some of the homeschooling now that he's back at work, but. I knew I had to do something and I got let go. I cried, drank a bottle of wine, and then the next day said, "Hey, friends, here's what happened. I want to see if I could do this for other people. Would anybody want a extremely discounted version of a podcast launch to see if I can replicate this for someone else?" Happy to say that person is still with me today. That
Oh,
very first
wow.
client
So you
is
took your
still with
skill
me.
set and you
Yep.
turned it into your business.
Yep.
Wow. And they're still
Yeah.
with you today. That was what, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So talk to me. So what is it? I want to get back to building community when you first started out. So tell us exactly what you do in your business for podcasting.
Yeah. So I do everything. It's a full service podcast management micro agency. So me and a few team members, all based in the US, all women. That was like always a priority for me. And we do podcast launches, podcast management, and podcast strategy. And so that can look different depending on the organization. Like we've worked with nonprofits, we've worked with thought leaders, we've worked with, small business owners. It really just depends on what your specific podcast needs. But the launch is always the first in that process if you don't already have a podcast, which takes us about 2 months, which people are like, I can get it done next week. Listen, there's a reason it takes us 2 months. We want to make sure that we launch with enough podcast content so that you can start off with a bang. We also spend 2 weeks on market research. That's that degree in marketing brain in me of like, no, no, we
Right.
do 2 weeks of market research to ensure what are the goals? What is the strategy behind this? We don't want to just jump in and say, hey, new podcast, who
Mhm.
dis? We don't need to do that. We need to be strategic about it. And that has really helped us. And then from there, we work for like, you can either go off and do your own thing after that. We'll hand you all of your SOPs, which that manufacturing helped me create. Like, here are all the operating procedures. Here's all of the, checklist of exactly what needs to be done from end to end so that it's easy to train new team members. I don't have, like, I can just say, here's that client's SOP, have fun. And I don't have to be like double checking the work because if you follow the SOP, you're gonna be fine. And so doing that, but honestly, I think my favorite is like the strategy side, which is what is the goal of your podcast? What are you trying to achieve? Is it for funsies? And if it is, that's cool. And you still need a goal, right? Is it growth? Is it connection? Is it turning, having your listeners leave reviews, right? Like you still have to have some type of goal, to help with what is your call to action at the end instead of just being like, follow me in this 50 places. Like we don't need to do all that. So the
Right.
strategy piece is my favorite. And so that's kind of a roundabout way of saying all the things that we do.
Now, don't you think, because I was a corporate baby, I came from corporate America before I stepped out on my own. But I felt like having that background in corporate America helped me as an entrepreneur grow my business. Don't you feel that way? It feels like, it's like that's your learning ground. If you know that I'm here for a minute and I'm just going to do my own thing, learn as much as you can
Yeah.
while you're working for somebody, because you're going to the most minute things, like you said, SOPs, running a meeting, the littlest things can help you when you go off on your own and run a
Yeah.
business, and then you start to get people to help you run the business. Don't you agree?
100%. I think about a lot of the managerial training that I did as I was going in, like when I was in the plant. Like you said, running meetings. I had to write
Mhm.
SOPs, and now these were SOPs. Where it was like if you put the valve in the cylinder incorrectly, someone will die. Right? Like these are like life or death standard
Right.
operating procedures. Podcasting is not like that. But I still take that same approach of like, what is the most mundane thing that I could think of that needs to be included to ensure that people get this done correctly? I think even I was ISO 9001 2015 certified, which is like internal auditing. So being able to dig deeper, asking more questions, and like things that I'm like, that doesn't apply to podcasting. Actually, it kind of does.
Yeah.
Being able to manage, work with sales and have communications of like, here are the actual deadlines that we can achieve as a plant. I know sales, you want it this quick, but logistically, here's how quickly we can get it done. So being able to communicate that with clients without being
Mhm.
like, I think I can get it done. No, like I know how long it takes to do. Here's what our turnaround times are, and this is what we're going to stick to. Being having to like sell ideas from a managerial perspective to change, influence teams. Like there's so much that I learned in there. Training people, like having to actually do hands-on training. And I remember we had a new team member at my corporate job who had a stutter. And so like having to work with people with different abilities and like
Yeah.
being able to communicate effectively and treat them with respect and understanding people's learning styles, like so much. Like I would not be able
It
to do that.
it is. It's just like that. And even if you just do like a side hustle or do something, whatever you are learning in your current role is going to prepare you for entrepreneurship 100%. Even if it's just freelancing, writing contracts, and you're just being a contractor, and you're just freelancing to get some extra money. All of that you learned over here is going to help you over here. And I was
Yeah.
like, and you don't think about that. You don't
Nope.
think about that. So now, when you started podcasting, it was a new thing and people were getting into it. Now I feel like every time I turn around, everybody got a podcast.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's like overhyped now, or do you feel like, no, you still, podcasting is important?
Yeah. It's interesting because I actually don't think the number of active podcasts has changed much in the last 6 years,
Mhm.
which is the interesting part. So the number of people who are actively at least once a month, creating new content with their podcast has not really changed. So yes, there are all these new podcasts, but they stop relatively quickly. And so that's where I think like there's not really competition when it comes to podcasts, because also most podcast listeners listen to anywhere from 9 to 12 podcasts a week.
Wow, really?
Yeah, the avid podcast listener will listen to a lot of podcast episodes at least, right? And so
Hmm.
they're listening to tons of episodes. If you only have 100 episodes, they're going to go run through your backlog and then every week you show up with new stuff, but they need to fill that time with other podcasts.
Hmm.
And so they find other podcasts that are either of the same topic as you or are similar into their interests. And so while I see that, yes, there are tons of podcasts, I think that there's room for everyone. I think that there's room for if people are like, but it's saturated. It's really not, I promise. Podcasts are stopping and starting every day. I think if you come to it with a strategy, right? Or if you're like, hey, I only want a podcast for a year, that's a fine strategy too, right? But you have to have like a purpose and a focus behind it to be able to actually achieve the goal.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty incredible how podcasting is like as a industry has changed over the years, but the number of from a listener perspective, number of podcasts hasn't really changed that's available.
So if I come to you and I don't, I just started my business, I sell candles. And I'm like, Alicia, I want to start a podcast to grow my business. I think that's the next thing for me. What what would you tell me I need to start first? Anybody that's like want to do this and start it as another layer to their business.
Usually they've been thinking about it for a while. And so they have an idea of maybe the types of conversations that they want to have. But usually my question is, what is the format? So are you going to be interviewing people or is it going to be mostly solo episodes? And then what is the goal? And typically there are four goals. I'm trying to pull my paper out here because it
Gotta
helps
get
to
your
have
notes, get
my
your notes out.
my formula here. There's typically four goals with podcasts, and it doesn't matter if it's a for funsies podcast either. Say you want to launch a podcast about paranormal activity in your town. Like, you still got to have a goal. What are you
Right.
trying to achieve with this? So, the first goal is conversion. That is usually for business owners. They want to increase the revenue of their business and they want to turn their listeners into some type of potential lead. What I like to say is, and this is from a previous client, the three C's: a client, a collaborator, or a connection. That is what you're trying to turn your listener into. The second one is impact. We see this with a lot of our nonprofit clients. They're increasing brand awareness. Maybe they're trying to increase funding abilities by being able to showcase, hey, here are the other people. Here are the people that are on our board, and we're interviewing these people, or we're trying, like, here are the people that we've positively impacted, right? So they're trying to use it for that type of approach. The third one is growth. And this is one that I think people are like, I want both and, which I understand. Pick one for 6 months.
Mhm.
Focus on that. And then if you need to adjust it or shift it, then you can do it in the next 6 months. So, growth, this one is they're trying to increase the number of listeners that they're getting exponentially. The fourth is engagement. They want their listener to engage with their content in some way. That could be leaving reviews, it could be sending you a DM, some type of message. And that was the goal for the podcast on cults was If you have been in a cult or if you want to talk about this or talk about this episode, send us a DM on Instagram. And that allowed people to send us messages and feel comfortable to be like, oh my goodness, me too. And so when you have that goal, it really helps you understand the type of content you want to create. It helps you understand the call to actions that you need to have in there. And it also helps you focus on the marketing and like what type of marketing do you even need to be doing? Because if your goal is conversions, then you need to have more educational content instead of, hey, new episode, post and done, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not going to help with conversions. Every aspect of it needs to be around what is the actual goal. So that's where I try to focus really heavily, even with launches. And I know that's like, well, I don't want to do all that boring work up front. That's why people hire me. It's because I help them do the boring work up front. We create a full marketing plan. What makes sense for your podcast? How can we make sure we achieve your goals? And then you can run off with it, or we can help support with that. And so, yeah, that's what I found is really helpful, especially if they're thinking, all right, I want to launch a podcast,
Yeah.
but where do I start?
Now, does it matter? Because some people say, I'm on YouTube and I have that's a podcast. Or they say, oh, no, I'm on Spotify, Apple, and I have a podcast. Are both of those lanes considered a podcast? Or is it, should they start? Which one would be better for someone to start out with? Because if you're on YouTube, it's a different type of formatting versus you're on an Apple or a Spotify.
Mhm.
Different type of formatting altogether.
Yes. So I would say both or either. Like you now that YouTube has the ability to host podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they have that kind of format, and that's actually what Google Play moved to now that they, got married to YouTube, etc. It's YouTube Music has what Google Play used to be. That's what it is now. And so they have podcasts there. And I would say they're probably one of after Apple or one of the ones that to really push podcasts from a streaming perspective, Google was. And so with them, with YouTube and them pushing podcasts now, you do have the ability to host a podcast just on YouTube. Now, if you want to make sure that you are reaching anyone wherever they like to consume content, which I think is always the priority, especially if you are trying to reach people across generations, right? So, like, my content is specifically around podcasting. That could apply to someone who's 20. It could apply to someone who's 55. It could apply to someone who's 70 who wants to launch a podcast, right? Like, it doesn't matter. And I want to make sure that the content I'm creating reaches that person wherever they are. If they like to listen to podcasts on Spotify, then my podcast is there. If they like to watch podcasts on YouTube, then my podcast is there as well.
Yeah.
And so, what we typically do, and we do have some clients that are audio only. There's nothing wrong with that. You can still connect your RSS feed to YouTube and have an audio podcast there as well. It's not like you have to have a video if you don't want to. But what I recommend is if you do have video, simply edit the video, get that all together, export the audio so you have both formats, the video and the audio. If you have an audio format for your podcast, make sure that if you're holding something up, you're describing it for the
Yeah.
listener because they can't see you. So make sure that you're holding like I have this beautiful cover of this book. Here's the title. Here's the author, right? Like you're explaining it out if you need to. And that can really help too for the podcast listeners because they get mad. They're like, oh man, this is like more video aspect than I feel like I'm missing out. And they're not gonna like that. So you want to make sure you do that. But yes, you could do both. I recommend doing what you have capacity for. That is always the ground. Like starting point is what is your capacity to be able to create something? Is it that you do have finances to give someone money to take care of your podcast, to edit it for you? Are you going to be the one doing it? How experienced are you? Is it worth starting with audio only and building up to video? Yeah, totally okay. You need to do what's going to work best for you. So that's what I always go back to is like, yeah, content is, king and consistency is queen and all that stuff, but your capacity, that's the key to all of it. Like you need to decide what's going to work.
100%. Now, I know people are like, oh, I don't have this. I don't have a camera. I don't have a microphone. Just starting out like the basics. What should the setup be like? From the background to the equipment, what should somebody start out with?
Yeah, so if you're wanting to use camera, I would recommend, your computer camera typically is all right. It's not the best, but it is all right. And you can always export things at a higher bit rate and stuff like that. So like if you're using something like Riverside to record your podcast, then you have the ability to export at so if you record it at 720, you can export it at 1080 or at 4K. So you can export at a higher level if that's something you're interested in. So you could use that. Phone cameras are also fantastic at this point. Like
I say that all the
crazy
time.
banana pants.
I know. I say that all the time. Why are you buying a $300 camera when you've got your iPhone?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, these cameras on the phones work great. There are like Riverside, if you're using something like Riverside to record, they have an app that you can record right in there. I would recommend, though, always having some type of external microphone. There's nothing that will turn a podcast listener off quicker than bad audio. So
I've
if,
heard that. I've heard somebody's like, your audio needs to be on point.
yeah, especially from a podcast perspective, right? If you're just focusing on YouTube and like that is where you want to focus, and yeah, you might be putting it on Apple and Spotify, but you don't really care, then having that quality audio is going to be very, very important. And you can get a $20 external microphone. Like it doesn't have to be anything expensive. I would recommend not having anything that is gonna like rub on your clothes. So if you do have like a lapel mic or, the external AirPods or something like that, don't wear earrings, don't like play with it. You don't want to do any of that. I like a good old fashioned microphone outside of my stuff. I'm gonna show you. This is the Samsung Q2U, and it is like was the one of the first
That's
ones
that's
that
like
I
a cordless
used.
mic. So it's like you can just Bluetooth it to your,
It is corded, so I don't
it's
have it
corded. Oh, okay,
connected to a
okay.
cord at the moment. So that's the Samsung. I had another one. I'm looking at my bag of tech goodies behind my desk, that I always keep with me because I never know when something's not gonna work and I'm gonna need to connect something else. I'm trying to find this other one I had. It was so tiny, but it worked so well. I'm gonna hold up a different thing. So this is not what it is. Um, but I had a microphone that was maybe this big, right? So this is my kid's dot
Yeah.
puncher thing. Um, but it was maybe this size,
Mhm.
and it had a USB connector, and then I just put it in its own little stand. It had a little three-prong stand that just sat on my desk. I tried to make sure I was close to it whenever I was talking. Now I have the Shure MV7
Mhm.
podcast microphone. This is couple hundo. I don't recommend starting with this one, right? Like if you want to increase your audio quality, but most podcasters don't make it past 20 episodes. It's about
Really?
90, yeah, it's about 90% of podcasters don't make it past like anywhere from 10 to 20 episodes.
Why is
So,
that? You think because it's a
so much
lot of
work.
work?
So
Well,
much work. And so why
yeah.
would you spend hundreds of dollars on something that you might not do consistently, right? And that's
Hmm.
where I think understand your capacity, doing the market research, all of this stuff sets you up to have longevity in podcasting if that is your goal, right? If your goal is, look, I just want to do a limited series and I
Hmm.
want to answer questions that my clients have and I want it to be 15 episodes, great. that is great. Like that is a great decision for you because that's what you can handle. And you can always decide that you want to come back and add more. But to start off, I don't recommend getting like a big crazy mic. Get something simple, something you can use, something that is easy for you to manage, right? If it's like, oh, I got to download all this extra stuff, don't do it. It's not worth it. So, camera and microphone. And that's pretty much all you need, some type of recording software. And then from there, you're going to want to like get into, okay, your hosting platform, where are you hosting your podcast? And then they will distribute your podcast out to any of the places. There are tons of free ones at this point. I know Riverside now has it where new podcasts can be hosted through them if you have an account with them.
Mm-hmm.
Substack has podcasts that you can distribute out, and I'm fairly certain that is entirely free.
Mm-hmm.
If you want something more simple but gives you great, what is the word I'm looking for? Features, but gives you great features. I recommend Buzzsprout. That's where I've been hosting podcasts since 2018. And anytime my clients are like, oh, we're at this place, I'm like, we're moving. We're moving you over. I absolutely love Buzzsprout. They're fantastic.
I've
So,
heard good things about Buzzsprout. Right now, I just keep it simple with YouTube. I'm on
yeah,
YouTube and I do YouTube podcasts. I have a webcam that somebody has suggested, Lisa, get a webcam. So I use that. Now, the whole microphone thing, that's the next thing that I'm going to jump on and to get a microphone. I'm on the fence about headphones, to be or not to be to wear a headphone. I'm not sure about that. I see people wear it, but I'm like, should I? Is that
there's a
important?
reason.
Okay, what's the
There is a
reason?
reason why we wear headphones. So when your sound is coming out of your speakers with an external mic, it will pick it up. And so you're going to get an overlay of the guest's voice on your audio track and your video track. So when you're going into editing, if you have a guest that talks like, especially from an editing perspective,
Mhm.
if my client, and we have clients like this, and this is why we have work, is they will affirm everything. Yes. Uh-huh. I know. Like we mute all that because it doesn't add value to the conversation. Once in a while, sure, but for the most part, we take it out. We can't take it out, or we'd have to like completely quiet huge segments of the audio of the host if the guest audio was coming through in a quiet, like if I'm editing and moving things around, I need it to be very clean. So from a listener perspective, to make the audio experience better, I do recommend it, especially if you have an external mic. Now, a lot of the software will have echo cancellation features where it won't pick up the echo. I don't think they work that well, quite honestly. Like they work fine, but not great. I can still sometimes hear myself over the guests. If I'm having an interview, I can hear my voice back through their microphone. And I'm like, ugh. But you don't need over the ear ones, right? You can get the ones that go in your ear and maybe loop around to hold them there so you're not fiddling with them. You can get AirPods and just Bluetooth them to your computer. There's tons of different options.
I'll have to. I'm gonna look into that because I'm like, I don't know if I should or shouldn't. So, what about the background? Like, what is important about that? Because I see many different backgrounds. I see people doing green screens, which I'm not too fond of. But when it
Right.
comes to like your background, what are some things that people should take into consideration?
I would say take into consideration the full frame. So in this case, for people who are watching this, you'll see my screen's a little fuzzy because we're recording on Zoom, and I have my background filtered and slightly faded. Now I've got like tons of smutty romance behind me. Okay. Which is, I have a podcast called We Read Smut, and it's all about smutty romance. This background is perfect for that, right? So, like, this is the space for my podcast on podcasts. I still have this as my background because this is just part of me, and I do talk about that podcast on the podcast about podcasting. I also have giraffes randomly thrown throughout because it's one of my favorite animals. I've got Lego up top, some Lego builds I made. And on the side, I have uh, I think it was a 1,000 piece puzzle I did of the world, but it's like a floral design. And then on the side, I have the back of a bookshelf, which is not very appealing, but it's fine. The rest of it looks great. I would just recommend that if you do want to have things in your background, that it matches you, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to say don't have clutter. If a lot of tchotchkes all over the place is you, do it. Like, who cares? And you might have people be like, oh, your background's very distracting. Then this isn't the space for you. And that's okay, right? Like, then I am not for you. If like my random drafts or my Lego or my smutty romances like are offending you, please go find another podcast on podcasting. Like, we don't need to, like, you don't need to be here. And
Right.
there's tons of other content that you can consume. Green screens, I think that if you're in a small space or you want to have a certain type of background or more branded background, then that's fine. I think that sometimes you need to be careful about how far into editing you do with that, because then it can look a bit wonky, and sometimes your screen will, where like maybe you can see behind you and things like that. So I try not to do that too much. And then, yeah, I mean, if you're in a small space and you just want to clear like a white background, that's okay too. Like you get
Yeah.
to decide what's going to work best for you. But yeah, I would just say, yeah, I don't want to say like it has to be clean and clear or you need to have personality to it. I think that it's really just up to you as someone who wants to portray a certain personality. What is that like? And then make decisions based on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it should match what your personality is.
Right.
Don't go, and you don't have to go out and buy a whole new set. I use stuff around my house. I
Hmm.
went to Ross's and bought some artwork. I refinished furniture that I find in the trash. So that's one of my
Nice.
secret hobbies. So I had stuff that I just refinished and I just put together an extra space, a corner. It could be a closet. I've seen people do some
Yeah.
really cool stuff with a closet. Now I can't do that because I got too
Make sure
many
you got
clothes. But
airflow.
anyway,
Airflow is
right.
important.
Keep your clothes though.
Right.
So, but make sure it reflects you. I think the one thing, so people have they got that, they they have the equipment, they may, okay, I know what I'm gonna talk about. The one thing I really struggled with was getting guests. And I had to be creative with that. What are some tips that people can have to get and secure guests? Because there's some vanity people out here, like if I don't have, starting out, especially if you're starting out at a zero,
Yeah.
what's the best way?
I would honestly recommend that in that pre-strategy where you're thinking about the type of content you want to have, start talking to people. Start networking with people in your industry, like even well before you start a podcast. Like I think about when I started my podcast about smut, I was like, had already been, it's literally called We Read Smut. Okay, like I have no shame. When I started that podcast, I had been wanting to do it for a few years, had connected with authors, had been in their DMs, had been talking to like my bookish content creator peers for quite some time. So when I said, I'm launching a podcast, would you be open to it? I didn't get any no's because I was already in community with the right people. And so I think that when you want to launch something that involves other people and involves telling the stories of other people or them sharing their expertise, that it's really important, especially from a comfort level as a new podcaster, that you're having conversations with people you already know and like and trust. Once you get to the point where you're like, I have used up my network, and this is something that I do for my show is I will actually in my intake form say, do you know anyone else who would be a good guest for this podcast?
That's a good idea. I
And
like
that
that.
has helped because I trust these people who I'm already saying, hey, I would love to have you on my show. and they know people. And I'm like, I didn't even think about that person. Like, yes, that's a great idea. And then I can reach out and say, hey, so and so recommended you for the podcast. Would you be open to maybe hopping on a quick chat to see if it's a good fit, right? Like, if you need to do pre chats to make sure that the actual content fits your brand and is aligned, then you can always do that.
When you were starting out on your business, like, okay, this is a thing for me. I think this is a business. What were some of the things that you did to kind of like get this off the ground? Because it's kind of hard, when you're starting off and you're trying to gather those clients. Like you said before, networking is key. How were you able to secure, hey, I can help you launch your podcast? What were some of the things that you did?
Yeah, I think honestly, those 5 years of networking and being in community with other entrepreneurs helped so much. I could not have had the success that I had, especially in that first 2 years, without that network at all.
Mhm.
Because I had not built up SEO. I had not built up a Googleable business. I had not built up any of that. And so I relied very heavily on my network to say, hi, this is what's going on in my life. Does anyone know anyone who would be interested in this? Does anyone have any clients who are wanting, like, you do systems and operations and things like that? Did your any of your clients want to launch a podcast? And then from there, once I had a certain number of, maybe it was like 5 or 6 clients under my belt using that, then I was able to let my clients know, hey, we're taking on new clients. If you know anyone, you get a 10% off discount based on whatever they're paying, which the referral of reciprocal referral, right? So it's not just like, hey, I want new business, send me referrals. It's, hey, I want new business, send me referrals, and you get $250 off of your monthly retainer, right? Because as long as this person stays with us. So then they're incentivized to move clients to me
Mhm.
rather than to be like, oh, yeah, this is. So then they're like, oh, no, I know someone who's even talked about it. Let's talk to them. And so that I found worked really well. And then from there, was able to say, okay, I built this base. Now I'm starting to get referrals. Now I'm going to focus on the SEO. I'm going to focus, and like little bit by bit was still working on that, working on the SEO, working on getting in front of new audiences via podcasts, via guesting, like doing guest blogs, doing collaborative posts with people, just trying to get my brand and my name out there more. And so that has really been like kind of the snowball effect that I used.
Mhm. With AI, because it's embedded in everything,
Yeah.
and even in podcasting too.
Yep.
How have you incorporated that into your business, as well as how do you use it? Do you use it with your clients, or do you use it when you do your podcast? How do you have that function for you?
Yeah. So sometimes I will use it for ideation, like
Mhm.
to go from end to end. Ideation, I will use it for that of like, hey, I'm thinking about doing, I need to do some solo episodes. You already know enough about my brand, or if I need to inform it, here's the podcast specifically that I'm working on. What are some ideas that you might have? Usually I nix 90% of them because I'm like, that doesn't feel aligned, or I want to take a piece of this and I want to take a piece of this, right?
Yeah.
Just to help with the blank page kind of idea. And so from there, I will sometimes, if I'm like, hey, go ahead and create an outline, it'll create an outline. I usually end up revamping it a bit because I'm like, I want to move this around, or I want to go deeper, or oh, I have a story for this one. Let me make sure I write that into that note, and then go into recording. Now, this is the part where I think people maybe rely a little too heavily on
Mm.
AI, or are maybe seeing that shift into. I recently heard someone talk about having an AI bot interview you for your podcast. And I was like, you ain't got no friends. You don't have any biz besties to be like, hey girl, can you come on my show for my 100th episode and interview me about my podcasting journey? Yeah, nobody. Like that's, you need to get out more, be in community with people. And so I think that we're maybe losing the plot a bit with some of these AI tools. So edit it, I record it, and then from there I will edit it. Now, I am a stickler for editing. That's why we like for our full service promise is we listen to every word. We do not just run the episode through AI or any of these editing services and
Mhm.
then put it on the podcast. That is our clients aren't paying us for that. They're paying us to edit for content,
And
right? And
authenticity.
yes, anyone can take out the ums, the ers, the false starts. But when it's like, no, that side tangent that you went on for 5 minutes actually has nothing to do with this conversation or doesn't add any value to this conversation, we're going to take it out, right? Like we take a bit more creative liberty with our clients, which is what they want because they have specific goals, which we understand that they're trying to achieve. AI is not going to be able to do that at
Yeah.
this point and to that level. From there, we got the transcript, we've edited it, we have the content, we put the transcript into AI to then spit out show notes, which we usually end up revamping because usually they're not giving the person's name right, or maybe the person's job title is like messed up. Like we double check all of these things. We have it create an SEO friendly blog. Again, using the transcript as our base. Don't add any additional, like, oh, but I think to. No, just based on the transcript, please and thank you. We have it create social captions. And for here, we do social captions in a few different ways depending on the client. So we might say, all right, I want social captions that are about conversion, are about connection, are about asking questions and like digging deeper with your audience, or maybe I want to sell something. Right. So you have to be strategic with that point. And then if our clients are on Substack, then maybe we're having it create a completely different from the blog post Substack article for the podcast, right? So it really just depends on where the podcast is, and then we kind of have it create this written content. So we don't really have to. Now we were doing this well before ChatGPT. Okay.
Yeah.
Which I don't think people realize. Like we were using AI adjacent tools well before this. I was using otter.ai, which is what the website is. Otter.ai. I started using it back when I launched my first podcast in 2018. And maybe it was 2018. It might have been 2020 when they started having more type of AI tools. So had that, and then they had a software on the side where you could like input, hey, I want you to take this transcript and use it to create more content. And a lot of the stuff that was spitting out was really great. So then I was able to train my team of like, all right, here are the prompts that we use for this. So when AI rolled out, it was like more progressively, I should say, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, what is this new
It
technology?
was a
I've never seen
natural
this before.
progression.
Like
Yeah.
very natural progression. And it's a lot more in depth now than I think that we anticipated that it would be on what it can do. But I would also always recommend double checking it, right? Like even if you're like, here are my podcast stats, sometimes it likes to make things up.
It
So
embellishes. It embellishes. It
yes.
makes mistakes.
Yeah. Double check. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how we're using it. And I don't see us changing that in any, in the future or anything like that. I think that what we offer, the people that, want it, they're the ones that are going to be attracted to our types of services. Whereas it's like you can go to Fiverr, you can go to Upwork, you can go to any of these places and get your podcast edited quickly. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And some of the nonprofits might want to work with us, right? Like, oh, the guest said something that is off the wall. Make sure we take it out, right? Like, someone from Upwork might not understand that aspect of it, or be able to do that level of editing that we're maybe doing on our end.
What kind of things can people do to help? Like, hey, I got this podcast. I'm trying to grow it.
Guest on other podcasts.
Oh,
Hands
really?
down, the quickest
Really?
way to grow your own show. Podcast listeners listen to podcasts. Okay. Not everybody on your social media is listening to the podcast. In fact, when they're on your social media or they see your content there, the app does not want them to leave. So they're
Mm.
already not interested in whatever content you're trying to push to move them to another platform, like the actual social media apps. And so by guesting on other podcasts, your call to action, maybe you have a freebie, maybe you have all this stuff. They don't know you yet. Yeah, they got maybe an hour with you, maybe 30 minutes with you. Send them to your podcast. Say, if you loved what I said here, when the person's like, hey, where can we find you? Go check out my podcast. This is where you can find it. It's like you're already on your podcast app right now. Type it in real quick, or you can go to this link and you'll be able to get access to all of the episodes where I go deeper on these topics. That is going to get you conversion, get you impact, get you growth, get you engagement so much faster than posting anything on social media or trying to focus heavily on SEO. Now, from there, you can build on that. But I always recommend start with podcast guesting, or if you're looking for like a boost, podcast guesting.
Really?
Yep.
I never would have thought about that. That is crazy. Okay, well, I
Yeah.
guess I better get some. And I've been a guest on a couple of podcasts. They've reached out to me via LinkedIn, but I never would have thought of, maybe I need to take a road show and be on some podcast. I'm gonna start doing this. Y'all
Yeah.
gonna see me out here more often.
You're going to be on my podcast. So there you go.
That's right. I sure am. Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of fun. I'm gonna ask you some rapid fire questions. Okay.
Fun, fun.
All right. Video podcasting essential or overhyped?
Overhyped. It's so much work. But yeah, it's fine.
Biggest waste of time for podcasters.
Trying to make it fancy. Like, it doesn't need to be fancy. I think that a simple editing, like, we don't need sound effects on everything. We don't need to zoom in and zoom out and like transition. Make it simple. It's okay.
Give value, I would say.
Yes,
Give some value that somebody can learn today and implement.
exactly.
Okay. Better authority builder, podcast or newsletter.
Ooh, I would say newsletter, but
Really?
I would say newsletter, not even like email newsletter. I'm thinking more Substack newsletter
Mm.
or a LinkedIn newsletter. I feel like those are better general authority builders than a podcast because you create a podcast, you got to get people to find it. LinkedIn is already going to push their newsletter. Substack is already going to push your newsletter to people on their platform and put it in their inbox.
Mhm.
So I would say Substack or LinkedIn newsletter is a better authority builder.
Okay. AI and podcasting, game changer or gimmick?
Game changer for a lot of folks who weren't already using it. Definitely a game changer to help them create more efficiently and not maybe stop podcasting because of all the work that goes into it.
One podcasting myth you wish you would die that you wish would die immediately.
That you have to have big name people on your show
Oh
to
my
have a
God, say that
successful
out
show.
loud.
Like,
Okay?
you don't at all. Like the best conversations sometimes are with like the smaller accounts and
Mhm.
the quote unquote smaller accounts or smaller people. Those you end up being able to go so much deeper. And when someone is Googling them, they don't show up on 50 other podcasts, right? Like these big name people, they're like, oh, well, I was on 100 podcasts this
Yeah.
year. It's like, okay, cool. Like, but no, I'm only able to find this person on 2 podcasts. Oh, okay, let me go check that out. The smaller name
Mhm.
people, hands down.
So, what's one thing every entrepreneur should know before starting a podcast?
It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it.
I agree. I agree. I tried to put this to bed so many times, Side Hustle Saturday. You just don't even understand. And
Yeah.
people would, because I took like a 2 or 3 year hiatus. And I'm like, I don't have time. And people were like, we like this, bring it back. There's nothing like this out here. We want to, I like it. Da, 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 da. And I brought it back, and people are very receptive to it. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
where you been?" But for me, it's like I like this bubble
Yeah.
a lot. Now, is it a lot of work?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It is a lot of work. Am I still wanting to monetize? Sure am. But I like it. Alicia, this has been, thank you. I always say this has been so great. But I thank you for being on Side Hustle Saturday and for educating us in the land of podcast, because it is more than just like I said earlier, y'all. It's more than getting a mic and a webcam and
Yeah.
just bumping your gums and telling people what you know and trying to give value. There's a whole business side to it. And if you are thinking about having a podcast or want to take your business to the next level and add on to that ecosystem, Alicia, tell the people where they can get in contact and work with you
Yes, make it super easy. You don't even have to spell my name. You can go to helpmypod.com, helpmypod.com, and that will give you resources. I've got tons of freebies, tons of workshops. If you want to work with my team, there's access for that there. If you want to listen to my podcast, there's access there. Everything you possibly could need is right on over there.
and I'll put all her details in the description below. And y'all, Side Hustle Saturday people, y'all know what to do. Subscribe to my channel, tell a friend, tell a fellow entrepreneur. Subscribe to Side Hustle Saturday, because we are dropping gems over here. We want you to not only take that idea off the napkin and start a business, but we also want you to build the ecosystem from that service or product that y'all done already launched and grow and build that empire. You know, that's what the soapbox I'm on right now. And I'm going to still say it to the day I die. Let's build those ecosystems and build those empires. So you know what to do. Subscribe, tune in, and I'll talk to y'all soon.